Today, we're digging into the incredible story of the man who ended centuries of war to literally create the blueprint for modern China.
I mean, you've definitely seen them. Those silent, terracotta warriors, thousands of them, standing guard over his tomb for eternity.
And of course, you know the Great Wall. Well, he's the one who started connecting it all, kicking off a project so huge it would continue for centuries after he was gone.
But what about the man himself? Who was he? Because the story of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, is an absolutely wild ride of ambition, raw power, and total transformation.
So his story doesn't start in some grand palace. Not at all. He starts out as a political pawn. Born back in 259 BC, the young prince, Ling Heng, was actually a hostage in an enemy state. So yeah, his future was not looking bright.
But then his luck changes, all thanks to this incredibly clever merchant named Lü Buwei. Lü Buwei looked at the prince's dad and saw basically a high-risk stock with a massive potential payout. He called him rare goods worth hoarding, and then masterfully schemed his way into putting him on the throne of Qin.
Well, the thing is, his father's reign was super short. He died after just 3 years. And just like that, at only 13 years old, Ying Zheng is now king. And guess who's running the show as regent? Yep, the merchant Lü Buwei, who now called himself the king's second father.
But to really get a grip on power, he had to be absolutely ruthless. I mean, look at this list. He crushes his own brother's rebellion. He exposes a massive scandal involving his own mother. He executes her lover and their secret kids, exiles her, and then he even forces the very man who put him on the throne, his mentor, Lü Buwei, to take his own life. No one was safe.
So by the time he's 22, he's got absolute power in Qin, which was already the most hardcore military state around. He's cleaned house, now he sets his sights on a much bigger prize, all of China.
And he didn't just go in with brute force. He and his top advisor, Li Si, came up with this brilliant 4-step playbook. They'd start with bribery and espionage to cause chaos from the inside. Then, they'd make sure their enemies couldn't team up, isolate one state, and only then attack with overwhelming force. It was less like a battle and more like a surgical strike.
And the results, well, they were terrifyingly effective. In just 10 years, a single decade, he swallowed up 6 different kingdoms. States that had been fighting each other for centuries were just gone. Which brings up a pretty big question, right? You've just conquered the entire world as you know it. Now what?
See, Ling Zheng didn't just want to be a ruler. He wanted to completely reboot civilization. So he gave himself a new name, a title bigger than any king had ever used, Qin Shi Huang, which means the first emperor.
First thing on the agenda, tear down the old system. He got rid of feudalism, where local lords run their own little kingdoms, which is what caused all the wars in the first place. Instead, he sets up a centralized government. He divides the entire empire into 36 districts, or commanderies, and puts his own guys in charge. This was a game changer, a model of governance that would basically define China for the next 2,000 years.
And to really get why this was so important, you have to understand what a mess things were before him. Just look at this. Every state had its own money, its own way of writing, its own system for weights and measures. Imagine trying to run a country like that. It's impossible. Trade, communication, law, it was all a total nightmare.
So his solution was sweeping and absolute. One empire, one standard, for everything. He standardized the writing system, the money, the laws, the measurements. It shows his obsession with control, for sure, but it's also kind of genius. He even standardized the width of axles on carts. Why? So every cart in the empire would fit in the same ruts on the roads he was building, making transport and trade incredibly efficient.
And to make sure those old loyalties to the former states were dead and buried, he did something drastic. He forced over 100,000 of the old noble families to pack up and move to his new capital city. It was a classic keep your enemies closer move, cutting them off from their local power and putting them right under his thumb.
Now, an emperor this ambitious wasn't about to let his achievements be forgotten. He wanted everyone, for all time, to know what he did. So he had these huge monuments put up all over the empire, with his accomplishments carved right into the stone.
And if you read these inscriptions, you get a very specific story. He's the great unifier, the one who brought peace and order. He freed the people from suffering and ended all the chaos. He's casting himself as the hero of the story, the savior of the nation. This is his official version of history.
But here's the other side of that coin. That unity
came at a staggering cost. All those incredible projects, the walls, the roads, his own gigantic tomb, they were built by millions of people under a system of forced labor. Taxes were crushing and the laws were brutal. He brought peace, yes, but he did it by taking away almost every freedom.
And here's the ultimate irony. He was obsessed with immortality, and he dreamed his dynasty would last for 10,000 generations. But the empire he built was so dependent on his own brutal control, the resentment was so deep that the whole thing fell apart just 3 years after he died. 3 years.
So that leaves us with this huge question, doesn't it? Was he a brilliant visionary who created a nation, or was he a paranoid tyrant? And the tough answer is, he was probably both. His story is a powerful reminder that history is complicated, that massive achievements often come with massive costs, and that legacy, for better and for worse, is baked right into the DNA of the country he created.